Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is November 15th, 2022, and let's get over the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, today, not many positive news. First of all, Russia did a massive strike over the entirety of Ukraine. They hit the biggest cities in Ukraine, including Kiev, Lviv, Rivne, Kharkiv, Kryvyi Rih, Poltava, Odessa, Mykolaiv, and Zhytomyr. So, essentially from north to south, from east to west. And you can see here the potential missiles that they have used, including Caliber missiles, the KH-101, and the KH-555 missile. And you can see the price tag. The 101 is their latest missile, which is a supersonic or hypersonic missile, if I'm not mistaken. So it's the most expensive one that they have. And you can see the price tag. So the cheapest one is just over $6.5 million. So if they launched about 100 of these, the minimum that they've spent today over this strike is about $650 million. Just take that in. That's $650 million that could have been used to uplift poor Russian people from poverty, from hungry kids in Russia, certain social programs. But of course, Putin doesn't care. Putin only cares about continuing this war and making life as miserable as possible for the Ukrainian people. However, as bad as it sounds, the worst news today is the fact that one of these missiles did hit Poland. Yes, it did hit Polish territory and it killed apparently two civilians in the strike somewhere in the city called Przewodów, which is very close to the Ukrainian border. It's about less than 6 kilometers away. If we look at the map here, this is the city of Lviv, which is one of the biggest populated cities in western Ukraine. And the city of Przewodów, which was hit by a Russian missile today, is located just around here. So north of Lviv, you can see it here. This is the city of Przewodów. And again, I don't think that Russia did it on purpose. I think it's probably a malfunction. It's just bound to be just because of the age, probably, of these missiles, the lack of maintenance, and the fact that just because of such a massive scale attack, it's just bound to happen. And unfortunately, they killed two civilians. A lot of people are very quick to the trigger, and they're saying that Poland should imply the fifth article of NATO, which means that they have to attack, and thus the entirety of NATO members have to also follow through. That's not going to happen. I seriously doubt that. Unfortunately, as bad as it sounds, it's still a very small scale event, which I don't think the Russians meant to do. And for such a small event, I think it's just no worse starting World War III, because this is raising the temperature from 20 degrees to 100 instantly if they go through with NATO Article 5. So I think that Poland will, of course, discuss that with NATO, see what the potential options are. And I think it's very clear that the option is to arm Ukraine to the teeth as much as possible, secure the airspace of Ukraine, and thus protect the borders of the NATO members, and also reinforce the borders even more of all the NATO members that are close to Russia. That includes the Baltic states as well, up north of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Finland potentially as well, eventually once they become part of NATO. But it's really it needs to be commitment from NATO to reinforce Ukraine as much as possible right now, because this is just going to continue happening if we don't stop Russia right now. And you can see also in the pictures here, it's a massive crater. Some people say that it might have been a Ukrainian anti-air defense system that malfunctioned or went astray. But due to the crater, I seriously doubt that this was Ukrainian sort of defense system that malfunctioned or hit the target, and it hit it somewhere in Poland. It clearly seems like it was a Caliber missile or some sort of Russian missile because of the size of the crater. It's unbelievable. So we'll have to see what happens tomorrow, but it's not so good news. And yeah, that's what Russia is doing right now. Unfortunately, as well, there is more articles coming out from Kherson, and I've mentioned it a couple of videos ago, that we're going to be hearing more and more about all the atrocities that the Russian army committed in Ukraine. And this is a quick article I pulled out from the Washington Post, but it is quite large, so I really advise you guys to read it. But it just recounts a lot of the witnesses in Kherson seeing how Russians committed tortures and the detentions of Ukrainian civilians in prisons and schools all over Kherson. And this one specifically mentions that the Russians dragged Ukrainian prisoners out of black sedans with bags on their head, and they took him inside in places like these, in basements, and everyone in the city could hear the torture, the screams, the shouts. Almost as often as prisoners arrived, others were thrown onto the streets, confused, naked, and injured, they said. And that's just the beginning. There's other reports that they saw people obviously disappear, priests, from school teachers to people that were ratted out by other pro Russians, and they just disappeared, and nobody knows where they are right now. So that's just the atrocities that Russia's committing towards a nation. And let me repeat that. It's not just atrocities towards a nation that is distant from Russia. It's Ukraine, a nation that shares a lot of history and culture with Russia. People that have, families, vice versa, in Russia and Ukraine, and the Russian people and the Russian soldiers are allowing themselves to commit such horrific atrocities towards Ukrainian people. To me, that's what hurts me the most. But it really shows the true nature of Russia. In every single day, we see more and more of this barbaric nature that some of these Russian people have. And it really pains me to see that, because this is something that I did not want to believe in. And last news today is that the Russians are indeed confirming that they are going to create a buffer zone. So they are withdrawing from the left bank of Dnipro for about 20 kilometers, because they are right now within HIMARS and artillery range of the Ukrainian army. So they are planning to withdraw. Thus, why it has been confirmed as well, to a certain extent, that the Kinburn Peninsula has been taken by the Ukrainian forces, and that Holopristan and the city close to Kherson as well, Oleshki, has also been taken by the Ukrainian army. It still needs to be 100% confirmed, but it shows that the Russians are indeed planning to withdraw at least towards this line here. So this by default gives us, or the Ukrainian army, already some sort of foothold within the left bank of the Kherson territory. So that's great news. And let's hope that the Russians withdraw all the way back to Russia. And I have a few videos, so I'll show you as well the video of that aftermath on the Polish territory. It's very quick, there's nothing crazy, but just so you can visualize. So this is again the confirmation that the Ukrainian forces are crossing the Dnipro River, trying to get a foothold of the left bank. And you can see that there's a lot of videos that came out the last couple of days, so they're really forcing through, they're not wasting any time, and the Ukrainians are really, really pushing as fast as possible so they can get a good positioning, and no time wasted here. This is an interesting video. So these are the T-62s that the Russians have pulled out, because now all their modern tanks have been almost destroyed and they don't really have much stock. So now they're using old T-62Ms with barbecue cages on top, and I'll explain why they use that. And that was in Kherson, so more trophies by the Ukrainian army. I don't know if you can call this a trophy because it's kind of a very old Soviet tank, but if you modernize it, perhaps it can be useful. But yeah, this was captured. They put some contact plates to reinforce it, but it's just not going to do much against really powerful missiles. But really old Soviet tech that they're pulling out right now. And you can see that this is the barbecue cage I was talking about. The Russians think that by putting this, it's not going to be destroyed because the javelins have an upward trajectory, and then it can hit the turret from above. And so that's why they think that installing some sort of barbecue cage is going to help stop that, but it's just not doing anything. It's just a cope cage, as they call it. The Russians cope, thinking that it somehow protects them from a javelin missile that goes like 100 kilometers per hour from above. So you can see all these tanks that have been captured, and there's a lot of visuals of Ukraine forces capturing a lot of this equipment all over Kherson. But they're not really useful. To be quite honest, you really need to modernize them to make them at least somewhat useful in the battlefield, because they're still old Soviet tech. You have hydraulic, manual sort of like little like manual levers and things like that to move the tank around and things like that. You have like very old technology inside. So against even a modernized, let's say Slovenian M55S, it's just going to do poorly. It's just going to get destroyed instantly. So yeah. And last but not least, this is the aftermath of the Russian strike in Poland. And as you can see here, the crater is massive. Um, yeah, it's clearly, in my opinion, a Russian missile that struck here. It's definitely not anything else. And I think the United States also confirmed that this was a Russian missile. So we'll have to see what the response will be from Poland, NATO, the United States, because this is a serious escalation by Russia. Even if it wasn't directly wanted by them, it still is their responsibility to make sure that they don't hit NATO, and they did in fact. So that was a major mess up by Russia. But who knows? Maybe they wanted that. So that's it, guys. Again, thank you for your support of my channel. Leave me a comment about what you think is going to happen tomorrow with this whole situation in Poland. I'm very interested to hear back from you. Leave me a like on this video if you really like this video. And yeah, I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for the support, and Slava Ukraini!